Okay, I'm really excited to introduce our featured founder today. Jenny Groberg founded BookSmart's Accounting and Bookkeeping in 2008. Named Utah's 2024 CEO of the Year by Utah Business, Jenny is passionate about helping women grow in every stage of their lives and now leads a team of 30 plus women. Hundreds of clients and companies of all sizes are growing because of the insights provided by Jenny and her team as they become aware of the impact of their financial decisions. Jenny's work has been cited in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Accounting Today, Yahoo Finance, US News, etc. Jenny is a 2023 Stevie Award winner 4 times, and BookSmart's Accounting and Bookkeeping is a 2023 Top 100 Companies Championing Women. We are super excited to learn from Jenny today, so please welcome her to the stage.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so excited. I have to tell you guys that over the past, 3 or 4 weeks that I've gotten to know Jenny, she's become a good friend and mentor of mine. So definitely someone you want to connect with and have in your network. So Jenny, let's start by can you just kind of tell us your background and how you founded BookSmarts? I know that could be a long story, but just kind of give us, that timeline.
Okay, I'll be brief. My husband was in med school, and he began rotations, and I moved in with my parents. I had 2 little kids, and I had to work. We couldn't afford to fly him home to visit our kids. My kids thought he had left them, actually. It was pretty traumatic. And I had to do something. I had to work, but I also didn't have any childcare. And so I found in the newspaper a person in Park City that had a restaurant that needed an accountant. And I had experience as a remote CFO. So I went up and interviewed and tried to convince him to hire me. It was between me and someone else, and he didn't hire me. And I was devastated. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I went home and I had somebody tell me, hey, look at, QuickBooks online certification. At the time it wasn't online, but it was a QuickBooks Pro Advisor certification. I'm like, I don't know if this is worth it. It's $500. I need a new laptop. I have no money. So I called the pro advisor and I said, what do you think? Is this worth it? And he's like, yeah, you'll get a lot of really good leads. So that's kind of how it started. I would put my profile up and I started consulting. And I found that I was the only female in a heavily male-dominated field of accountants. And I had this one guy call me from Bountiful, Slim Olson's. It's a gas station. They have a lot of property. And he's like, I would much rather work with you than a 50-year-old fat guy. And it was so funny. I'm like, great, I'm your girl. So before I would leave an appointment, I would give them my laptop and ask them to do a review for me. And I'd go in the other room, and it was awkward. It was so awkward. But I started to get enough reviews that then people would look at me and my profile and see the reviews, and I'd get more traction. So
that's awesome. I love right there that first step when you're like, one door closed and I had to open another one for myself. Like you had to kind of figure out a different way. So then with BookSmarts, you were the only, well, I probably wasn't BookSmarts at that point.
Yeah,
but
it was.
You were the only, okay, it was. So
Yeah,
you were the only person. So talk to me about building your team and scaling that into what it is today.
Okay, good question. So it began with me doing these consultations, and often the business owner would say, would you train my wife or would you train my secretary? They don't know how to use QuickBooks. They don't know anything about accounting. So I would train them, but oftentimes then they would say, okay, I actually need you to double check them every month, or they were trying to do it themselves. And they would just say, this is so much better if you do it. And I would tell them, you may pay me $500 or it may be $1,000. And then you can make so much more money building your business. And so most of the consultations I went on, they would end up having me do the accounting. So I would work at night. I'd work till 2 a.m. I would work during nap time. And then it got to the point where I was drowning. I had a 3rd baby and I was exhausted. I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. I have to be done with my business. I was maybe doing $30,000 a year, I would say. I mean, not a lot, but it was enough that it paid the remainder of our bills. I'm like, I'm done. I'm selling. And that didn't work out. And then I hired my first employee, and that was my first switch point where I feel like it really turned the dial. And at the time, I didn't have enough work for full time for her, but it was okay. I didn't care. And I taught her. She was not a skilled accountant. That was not her background, but she was really smart and she was a hustler. And I taught her everything, data entry. So she would do the data entry, I'd do the oversight, I'd prepare the financials and send them to the company or the CFO or whoever. And got to the point where she could eventually do it. So I was working on acquiring more business. I'd send it to her and she would do the footwork. And then when it got big enough, then I brought on someone else. So it just kind of steamrolled from there.
I like that tag team approach where you worked on growing the business and you had someone to help the business wheels turn.
For sure.
So at Booksmarts, do you guys do your own accounting as well?
Okay, that's a funny question. I don't do it for my company. And the reason is because I can make more money if I'm working on building my business. So these kinds of things, writing, teaching, consulting, all those things, I'm going to do more for my business. So I have a staff accountant that does it for me.
Okay, I think that's a lesson right there. Even if it's a service that you offer, it might not make sense to do it for yourself.
It never
as
makes
the business
sense
owner.
to do it for yourself.
It never makes sense. Can
I
you
don't
think of
think
any
so.
other situations besides just accounting that applies to, or?
I would say in everything.
In
I
everything.
mean, if you own a paint company, are you going to be painting your own house? Absolutely not. Everything that you do, I'm constantly telling my VP, delegate everything on your plate. Because the odds are is she will not delegate 100%. And just the action of delegating, constantly delegating, I'm constantly giving her more work. And so it is a fluid motion, and she will never be able to fully delegate everything that she's doing. But if we can work on that and be hiring other people to support her, then we can handle growth. If you're not delegating constantly, you won't grow.
I love that. Speaking of delegation, there came a point where you had some major delegation to give when you needed to step away from the business. So can you just tell us the story of how that came to be and why that was necessary?
Yeah, you bet. So I got to the point where we were probably doing maybe $300,000 a year, and I was fine with that. I had maybe 10 plus employees. I had 5 kids. I was good. My husband finally had a job, and we were okay. And I couldn't handle any more employees. I couldn't support more. And to be honest, I didn't really have a desire to be going out meeting with clients and building the business. It felt stable, and I was happy with where we were at. And then I had an accident. I was getting ready for bed. I jumped up on my counter to grab something out of my tower, and I slipped off the counter and fell on my travertine floor and hit my head really hard. And I didn't really realize at the time how catastrophic it was, but I was in what felt like a coma for the rest of the summer, 3 or 4 months. And it continued for 3 years before I found appropriate help. I'm now 6 years out, but that was an extremely low point for me. I can't really convey the hell that was, but my capacity up until that point was quite high. I really felt like my value is based on my productivity. And I think a lot of business owners really thrive on being productive. How much am I getting done? All the things I can do, volunteering, my business, my family. I'd wake up early and run and lift and all the things, And then to go from that to maybe 2%, literally my capacity was 2%. I couldn't go to Target to help my kids get school supplies. I couldn't open my email. I couldn't process schedules, the soccer schedule and what that looked like. I couldn't capacitate it. I couldn't figure it out. And it was a really, really low time in my life, obviously. But I for sure couldn't invoice. I remember I would pull up my laptop and I would lay on my bed, and just the scrolling and the motion and the lights were so intolerable for me. I would lay on my bed, and then I would sit up and I would try to do some invoicing, and I would do my biggest client that had to have his invoice, and the rest of the invoices I'd push off till the very last day of the month. It was horrible. So I again felt that need to get out of my business. I'm like, I don't need this. This is not helpful. And I had a doctor tell me, Jen, you will never get better unless you give up 5 things. You've got to give up at least 5 things. And it was pretty evident that my business was one of those. So I made the really difficult decision that I was going to sell again, right? Because that is just what you think is the natural exit strategy, is to sell and get out. And I offered it to my manager at the time. And she said, no, I want to be a mom. I finally got pregnant. And she said, Emily is your girl. Emily was a staff accountant who had been working for maybe a year or 2. And I'm like, I don't know Emily. I haven't worked with her. I don't know what this is going to look like. And so I offered to sell it to Emily, and I felt like the offer was not good. I felt like I could run it into the ground over the next 2 years and do better than what she was offering me. So I'm like, I'll risk it. I will have you lead, because I didn't know her and I didn't know how successful she would be, but I felt like the risk was better if I just let her go for it rather than sell. And I was nervous about letting her invoice and see my numbers. It was like getting completely naked in front of a complete stranger. It was horrible. And I just said, this is what this looks like. This is what I need. And she jumped in, and I offered her profit sharing. That was the second switch point in my business where I felt like it really moved the needle, and I had really significant growth from that. She was highly motivated. She had the capacity that I didn't. Her kids were going on to college. So any leads I would get or referrals, she would go to the appointments. And we grew 400% with Emily. It was pretty incredible. So that was a really good move.
So it ended up being a good move to delegate it to Emily, and you stepped away to take care of yourself while you needed to. And then what was that process when you decided to come back into the business?
So I would meet with Em maybe once a month, and I would coach her and guide her and direct. And she was the buffer with all of the staff, with the questions, the clients, and she's done a fabulous job. After, I think I stepped back for about 2 years. So I floundered for 2 years on my own trying to do things. And then I stepped back for 2 or 3 years. And I came back about 1.5 years ago. I started to feel better. As a side note, I did every therapy I could get my hands on. And I feel really fortunate that I had the ability to pay for that, to do cognitive therapy, vision therapy, all the things, right? And I found an eye doctor in Chicago that makes me these special glasses that have helped my brain heal. And after 1 year of wearing the glasses, I'm like, I finally am getting my life back. I feel better. And I started to pull out my laptop and I started to work. And I could tell Em was kind of like, wait, what's happening? What does this mean for me? I'm in charge. I'm the COO. Oh no, she's wanting to be back. And she and I have a really good relationship. And it was, I pulled her aside and I said, Em, I need you. You're fabulous. You still oversee the team, oversee the clients. Let me work on growth. Let me work on outreach. Let me work on community service. And we'll do this together. So that was really powerful to then have 2 people leading. And we've done a really great job, I think.
Sounds like you guys make a great team. That's awesome. So you were saying that one of the switch points with Emily and kind of getting that buy-in from her and becoming a great team, part of it was profit sharing. Yeah. So talk to us about how you decided to make that a piece of the pie and why you feel like that helped increase that relationship.
I wanted her to be able to see the numbers and make strategic decisions. And if she had skin in the game, if it affected her directly, I felt like she would make better decisions. One thing I feel like Em did really well was automation. I told you I was slow with my invoicing. That was my last priority. I wanted the work done, but the money, I'm like, whatever, we can get that later. She comes in and she makes sure that the clients are paying us before, at the beginning of the month, that subscriptions are happening. We were paying maybe $400 or $500 a month in merchant account fees. I think now it's $40.
Wow.
I mean, every dollar on the P&L she's going through and making sure that it is as tight as can be, which was really great. And also implementing technology that would help our organization run better. And she'd say, we absolutely need this. And I'm like, okay, go for it. Because I know it affects her, and she's only going to make those decisions that's going to help the business. So that was the best move I ever made, was offering profit sharing.
I love that. We recently, on our Midnight Founders podcast, we had a guest who talked about intrapreneurship. So not just entrepreneurship where you're starting the business, but an intrapreneur who takes the business that exists and find ways to innovate and help it just be better and do better and process better. So I think you and Emily really are that perfect dynamic between the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. So that's
totally.
fun.
And also for our clients, you know, as accountants and controllers, we can go into a business and say, you have inefficiencies here. You need to tighten this. And we can kind of drill down and offer that same insight and help them to be more profitable.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned that as you were kind of re-emerging into the company, that you wanted to oversee community outreach and things like that. So I've noticed by following you on LinkedIn that you guys have a community give back through a scholarship. So talk to us a little bit about why you decided to do that and kind of how you set it up and why it's important to have a community give back, charitable give back.
So I explained, you know, that I feel like my life was ruined and taken from me. I laid in bed for years, you guys, I can't even tell you. And I just remember praying, please let me be a mom again. Let me be able to serve it in any capacity possible, because this is the worst. I just kept thinking, okay, if I can do this therapy and I can improve 1%, if I throw enough targets at the wall, something will stick. And those small marginal gains I felt like would really make the difference. And maybe I'm an eternal optimist, but I kept thinking, this is going to be it. I'm going to get better if I do this. And I finally did get better. I'm not 100%. I'm still working at it, but I do feel like if I can come back from that anything is possible. And I do feel extremely blessed that I have been able to get better. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that do not have as many resources or opportunities that I do. So, you know, I make it a huge priority to give back. So we do a scholarship every year for women in business, and we give $4,000 in scholarships. That made me so happy to award Kate and Sienna bought scholarships this year. You know, we helped with the Davis High Teen Center. They're building a teen center and needed help with that. So there's a lot of different areas that we are contributing. And I'm hoping that even though it's a small contribution, that it will add up to be those big things.
It makes a difference to the people who benefit from it, for sure.
Right.
So as part of, you know, building your company and having that community give back, it sounds like you're intentional about kind of the culture that you're building and the reputation of your company as well, but the culture is kind of what I'm interested in here. So you employ 30 plus women. How have you intentionally built a culture that those employees want to be part of, where they feel valued?
So you would ask me what I'm most proud of, and that is what I'm most proud of, that we employ women, all women. I had somebody say, you discriminate against men. I don't know if that's okay. You're probably going to get sued. I'm like, I don't care. Okay, we'll see what that looks like, right? But we do employ all women, and I think it's really great that they have the opportunity to stay at home, and that is what I was hoping to do, because I didn't have that opportunity. I had to create it. So by allowing these women to be able to work from home and contribute financially, but also be with their kids, it's pretty incredible. So
that's great. That's great. I know you posted something on LinkedIn recently where you like, at 2:00 we had this meeting and so was here and this person's kid was doing this in the background, and just kind of that snapshot of really enabling that work and life balance to kind of collide. So I think that's cool that you've been intentional. And that you're proud
we
of
have
it.
a really great culture. We meet every year for a retreat, and fly everyone in. We do calls, and I really I give the credit to Emily to creating such a great culture with the women and really being their biggest cheerleader.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Good. So when you and I chatted a few weeks ago, you mentioned like 3 pillars, so to speak, of entrepreneurship. One of which was delegating, and I think we've talked about that quite a bit. Another one of them was the why not you mentality. So talk to us about what that means to you.
Okay, so I think I just touched on that briefly, is if I can come back from a traumatic brain injury, then anything is possible. I really believe that. I mean, in the last year and a half since I started working again, I've gotten in Forbes 4 times, NASDAQ, Yahoo, Accounting Today, CEO of the Year. And I really do stand back and think, what in the actual heck is happening, right? Like, this is so much bigger than me, but I do think it gives me the opportunity to tell people, yes, anything is possible. Yes, you can do it. Why not you? And I 100% believe that. And, it's the mantra of, go bigger, go home, but now it's go bigger, go bigger. So it's possible. We're doing great things, and we have really awesome clients. I'm really proud of the fact that I've had some clients for 15 years. And as they grow, we grow. And as they become CEOs and move to boards, then they recommend us to be kind of a flex or fractional accounting or controller for them. I was driving down here and see a billboard for Spilt. It's a caffeinated milk, and they're one of our clients. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, So it's really fun. I had a client who had a car dealership, and he had an idea for a salon. And his brother's home burned down, and they used the money to put it into a salon. And then after 4 salons, he's like, this is ridiculous trying to manage 120 girls and rent and all that goes with that. So we started franchising. And Image Studios is now on track to hit a few hundred salons. And we do all the accounting work for corporate, but also the franchisees. So it's a really beautiful thing to support business owners, to help them grow, and then they recommend us and we grow with them. So it's super fun.
So I asked about your company culture with your employees, but now I'm curious about, I guess, culture and relationships with your customers, because that's huge, that they're scaling and they want you guys to stay with them and to grow with them, and they've been with you for 15 years. So how have you navigated those relationships with customers and good customer success to get them to stay with you that long?
It's a really good question. I feel like the most important thing is I want to help my client. And whatever that means in whatever capacity, that's fine with me. So Jason Olson at Image, he said, Jen, I think I can do this cheaper in-house. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. I'll help train, whoever you bring on. We helped transition. We trained his new employee. That employee got married. The next employee had a baby. All the things that I face with my staff. It's tricky. And then he called me after 2 years, and he's like, yeah, you can do it better.
We need you back.
Yeah. So
take us back.
So he knows, and our clients know, we want to help them to be their best, whatever that means. So if our role is small or big, that's fine. But I think it's this relationship of trust and honesty that is my top priority, that they know that we're going to be honest, that they know that we will do whatever to meet their needs. And then, that relationship continues.
That's great. So has there ever been a time where you felt like the services that you provide or your team culture wasn't aligning with a customer? Have you ever had to say no to a customer?
Okay, so this is a crazy story. In this last month, at our retreats every year, I tell my staff, you are the asset. My job is to protect the asset. You are the most important thing. You guys come first, regardless of what happens with our clients. And so I want them to know that if they're not happy, then we will get rid of our client. So a month ago, I had the opportunity to put my money where my mouth was. I had a client, he was generating, I should say they were generating close to $200,000 a year. So It was a really big account. And those are few and far between, obviously, right? So that relationship had been cultivated. We'd been recommended all the things and a series of building blocks to have that relationship. Well, my CPA comes to Emily, my VP, and says, I am really unhappy with this client. They were not responsive. They were undermining her, acting like she didn't know what GAP principles were, wouldn't read her emails, and then would act like she wasn't doing her job, all those things. And it was a pain point for about 9 months. So I asked Emily, is there nothing we can do to save this relationship? I just brought on another really expensive staff accountant. I'd raised my CPA, and it was going to hurt really bad to lose this client. I'm like, can we not be more creative? Are there any other solutions? Can we go to the board? Well, the board had just, anyways, there were a lot of things. Well, the final straw was that they had changed their financials in order to keep their line of credit open. And my accountant was very, very unhappy. And it was just like, all right, that is all I need to know. I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with you. We're done. And it was okay. Yeah, it's a pain point. And then 2 weeks later, I got a referral to another large company that will easily replace them, and it's no problem. So it's fun to see the wheels of karma and relationships and all those things. And I'm grateful that we prioritized her and her well-being and all of the data entry and bookkeepers under her. It was really impacting everybody negatively by maintaining that relationship, and it's not worth it. And there's plenty of business, and money is not the priority, right? Like, the priority is these women, giving them work, providing awesome services to the businesses. So I had to think twice about it. I will admit it was tough to fire them, but it was a really good move.
Yeah, it's one thing definitely to say, we value you more than the money or the clients and stuff, but when it comes time to put your money where your mouth is and do it, that's hard.
It was a little hard.
So I think it's awesome that you lived up to that. And that was kind of the third pillar too that we were getting at, was relationships over money and value people over money. So I don't know if you had anything else to say
and I think that's why our clients value us too, because they know that we are not just about money. We want to help them.
First.
It's people first.
Yeah.
And those relationships, it shows after 15, 16 years to have those same relationships. It's really awesome.
I love that. We last week at a different event that we had, we heard someone say, if you ask what does the business need versus if you ask what does the customer need, you'll have more success with the latter when you focus on the people and their needs rather than just your business numbers and financials and things. So I love that.
Yeah, and when my staff is not okay, I can see it, on staff calls, on meetings and things. If things are not okay with their family, or you can sense that they're not okay, then their work follows that same correlation. And so it's really important to kind of have your finger on their pulse and know what's happening with them, how things are going, so we can support them better, because if they're not okay, the client's not going to be okay. So if we really focus on them first, then everything else will be taken care of. The client will be taken care of.
How do you navigate that in day-to-day to know kind of what's going on with your employees, to keep that pulse on the quality of their work that affects the reputation of your company, quite frankly? So how do you navigate that day-to-day?
That's a good question. So one of my biggest failures with my business was only having one accountant per client. So if I lost that employee, and that happened initially, I told you I hired someone and trained her on how to do everything. And I'm teaching, I would teach at the U accounting classes and Utah nonprofits, and she would run all the clients. And after 3 years, she's like, I think I'm going to go to work for one of my clients. And that was pretty catastrophic, because I recognized she held my business in her hands. And after that, I made sure that didn't happen again. So we have teams for every client. We have multiple accountants. We have data entry and bookkeepers on every client. And the benefit is twofold. Not only is there more security for the business, but there's more security for the client. If somebody goes on maternity, which happens often, if there's a vacation, we have support the client can call at any point in time and there's multiple people that know what's happening. So it's expensive to cross-train like that, but it is foundationally what has helped us be more successful. So that was really catastrophic and has happened a few times, but we make sure that we have support. And by having a team, they're calling each other constantly. They're working collectively. Like I said, we do have staff calls, but by working in teams, there's a lot of collaboration, even though they're remote. Does that make sense?
Totally. I love that. Yeah. So it's kind of like the hit by a bus rule. You know, if somebody gets hit by a bus, is like, are other people going to know what they were working on and what their projects were? So you definitely
How
have
can
that
we mitigate
in
this
place.
risk? And I think it's okay to associate a number or a score to different areas of your business and say, what is my risk here? So, and I would say do it 1 through 4. My staff with certain clients, that is the biggest risk. So evaluate your business, go through different aspects and assign it a score and say, how can I lower this? How can I make this so it's less of a risk and so that there's more stability for your company?
That's great. Were there any other growing pains that you felt along the way as you were bringing on, extra staff or extra clients and things that were not in place yet that you had to kind of figure out as you went?
I mean, there's always growing pains.
I'm sure.
Right? Like right now, we have growing pains. We just got another client. We're trying to train more staff accountants. HR is every business owner's biggest nightmare. It's our biggest problem. And we sometimes hire, and we've gotten better at it. You can vet all you want and say, this person is going to be incredible. And I would still say it's a 1 in 10 chance that they're going to be incredible. It's really low. It's really hard to find really incredible people. And so now we're at the point where it's like, it's evident right at the beginning that this person is not amazing. We try to part ways and pivot and find somebody who does fit. And we can see it almost immediately. Mm-hmm. We hired someone, and her first day of work, she missed her first appointment. And it's like, that's probably not going to be great.
Bad form, on your first day.
It's not a good marker. And then, she said, "Oh, my computer's broken. This isn't working." And it wasn't a computer issue. It was a software issue and maybe a lack of ability in figuring out new software. So HR is so tricky, and I think it's important to just constantly be saying, how can I do this better? How can I pivot if someone's not working? And try to always be building your best team. Because if one person is not doing their work, the other staff members are trying to put together those pieces, and it's catastrophic for everyone.
Yeah. So Jenny, what is an accomplishment that you're most proud of in your career?
That I am most proud of?
It's okay to brag.
I am most proud of my 5 kids, and I am most proud that I can show them, hey, I can do this. I can also be a mom, and you're not limited because you're a girl. You're not limited because you're a boy. Anything is possible. You just have to decide what you want, and there's always room at the top. This last year, there's different awards and things, and those are meaningful. It's not this overwhelming joy. When I gave those scholarship awards, I felt so much happiness from that. That made me really happy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, my biggest accomplishment is being in a position where I can be employing women. That is meaningful, that they can be home with their families. And it's also meaningful to just be able to work. That is my biggest accomplishment probably, is just pulling myself back together and just saying, I'm going for it. I can do this. And again, it's that I don't know. I'm hoping. I'm going to hang on to that and just keep clawing my way back. But I am most proud that I can work again. It's pretty fun.
That is a huge accomplishment, coming back from that injury, for sure. You touched on, the ability to work from home, and your kids have seen you grow this business. How has that affected them, that they've been able to watch their mom grow this business and come back from obstacle after obstacle?
It's kind of embarrassing when my kids will say, oh yeah, my mom, she's hurt, so she can't, drive me here, or she can't be at this or whatever. And so to now have the capacity and the energy to be at more of their events and to support them is pretty awesome. I don't know if they fully understand, what we're doing or what that looks like, but I can see it. Like my son will say, oh, my mom got on Forbes or whatever, and I'm in the car and I'm so embarrassed. But it is fun that they recognize that that something's happening, and that I've gone from not being able to do so many things to now being able to do a lot more.
That's an incredible comeback story, and I'm sure that your kids have been very proud to witness that.
Thanks.
So I
It's
love
great.
that. We're going to open it up for audience questions in just a few minutes. So if you have anything that you would like to ask Jenny, just prepare for that. So Jenny, what's the future looking like for Booksmarts? What do you guys have on the radar?
My goals are so big and so vast.
They should be, right?
Yeah, that I tell Emily, okay, I want to do this. I want to hit 5 million, and we're going to do it X, Y, and Z. And, she's kind of just like, you're killing me, or what does that look like, or how do we do that? And it's really fun to think, yeah, why not? Absolutely, we can do that. So I feel no limitations. My goals are very much so to give back as much as I can. I told my husband the other day, nothing would make me more happy to donate all the profits from my company. He can support us now finally, which is pretty great. So that would make me happy. So
More community give back. I
yeah,
love that.
Absolutely.
So I have one more question before we open it up to the audience. So you've mentioned, you guys have been featured in all these different publications and things. What's maybe one story that sticks out to you that you were able to share with the world via a news publication?
So I did a piece for Forbes on outliers. I worked with Kelly Erb on that. And that was really fun because it was all my content, and that hit maybe November or December. But the idea was when you run a P&L, run it for a 3-month time period or a 3-year time period, and look for outliers, right? It's a pretty basic thing, but a lot of business owners don't do that. But if you can compare 3 time periods, you can see trends. This is a sad story, but I had one. It was actually my husband. I'm like, something is wrong with your cost of goods. And I was not doing his accounting. I'm like, something is wrong here. He's like, no, our supplies have been more expensive. And I want to kind of let him do his thing. But also his payroll, I'm like, your payroll, something's wrong here. And I could see just the trends were not right. Well, it turns out that he had an employee that was stealing. She used their Amazon account to buy all of her Christmas presents, all the things. She opened a credit card in one of the other doctors' names. She would use overtime. She was booking overtime. I'm like, she's not working this much. This is ridiculous. But she had created this relationship of trust where they would give her quite a bit of liberties that they didn't really question. And I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but I'm like, and it wasn't my client, but I really advised him to drill down on cost of goods. Now he's busy, and this is where it's helpful to have an outside perspective or an outside party like Booksmarts to kind of just keep an eye on things. And then we found, or it became apparent, that she was using Amazon, and then Amazon's kind of hard to filter sometimes. And so a lot of the things were just hitting cost of goods, and nobody was really questioning what that was.
What the actual purchase was, yeah.
So this piece with Forbes, I found it interesting that here I am talking about outliers when I am an outlier, right? Like my injury and things really pushed me outside of maybe normal activity, normal output, and and it was really fun to then say, this is an outlier, or these are things that a business owner needs to be aware of, but you can totally bring it back together. It just needs maybe a little extra effort. So that was super fun. That was probably the highlight of my year.
The highlight content.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. Okay, if you guys have a question, just stick your hand up, and I will probably repeat the question, or do we have a second mic? They'll give you my mic. You don't need to hear my voice. We need Jenny's voice. So why don't you pass this one? We'll start right here.
So sell us your business. Why Booksmarts? What makes you different and unique? And about what size do you start working with companies? How big do they need to be?
Okay, so we help every size of business, actually. We help small businesses, and we have clients that are $10 million businesses. We have mom and pop stores. We have beauty companies. We service everything. We just prefer to work with clients that are nice. That's really what it boils down to. If you need accounting help, we're your girls. So let's say that you need an accountant and you don't want to have to filter through the resumes and pay for the training, then you can hire Booksmarts, and we will jump in. We'll do your bookkeeping. We'll provide the financials. We will help the business owner make better decisions. So we can act as a bookkeeper if that's what you need. We can act as your accountant if that's what you need. And if you need an outsourced controller, we can do that. The benefit is that you're not constantly training, and you have that. A lot of times people leave, and it's trying to train and restaff, and that's exhausting. And so if a business wants to make sure that there is a second eyes on things, they would hire us. And that's really beneficial because everybody needs a second set of eyes. I'm a firm believer in checks and balances. And, my poor husband and his business partner, case in point, they think that everything is great, but it's not. And by having multiple people double checking things, the odds of having better numbers, better decision making, all those things, you're going to be a lot more successful as a business owner. I had a CFO call me 2 weeks ago, and he said, I am having a personality conflict with my controller, and my assistant controller is pregnant. He said, if I lose these guys, I'm dead. And I said, we can jump in immediately and help you. And so we have, and it's a big account, and we can immediately jump in and provide that controller type services without him having to pay benefits and taxes and training and all those things. So we're significantly less expensive than if you were to hire somebody on staff to do bookkeeping or accounting or controller work.
Hey, Jenny, thank you for your great story. 15 years with your forced 5-year hiatus, if you will. I'm curious, given how well you've done, when do you expand outside of Utah?
Oh, we're outside of Utah.
Okay. And do you have people all over the country now?
We do.
Okay. And are you doing geographic expansion or just wherever things shows up?
Yeah, we're the word leads people. So
Okay.
half of my staff is outside of Utah, and we have maybe 10, maybe 12 accountants in the state of Utah. We have clients all across the U.S. So we are not limited to just Utah. And again, accounting is such that you don't have to have somebody in-house. We have no problem going to your office and help you, kind of streamline things. But the way work is going, everything can be done remotely. And we have been doing it remotely for 15 years.
Hey, thank you for the great wisdom you shared. You mentioned about when Emily came on. You said you did profit sharing. What did that look like? Like, was her initial offer, you said it was low, and you said, hey, let's transition. Like, what did that transition look like, and how did you retain control of the company, or is it 50-50? Can you just walk me through
Yeah, good
that?
question. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I offered her, she would stay with me long term. I felt like a lot of times I would have turnover at about year 3. Maybe people would get bored. You know, Emily has been really stressed. The last 6 months have been tough with some of our accountants. And I'm so grateful that in addition to offering her profit sharing, that I also offered her some ownership. So what that looked like is immediately I offered her 6% of net income. And then I told her, was it 6%? I think it was 6 or 7% with a cap at 10%. But I wanted to incentivize her immediately. So I said, I'm going to give you 10% ownership, and you will earn 1% per year for the next 10 years, but you vest at year 5 and you vest at year 10. So at year 5, she gets 5%, and then at year 10, she gets 5%. So her buy-in is just her sweat equity, but I didn't want to give her profit sharing of 1%. I didn't feel like that would motivate her, so I expedited the profit sharing. So her first year, I offered her 6%, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then she's set at 10% until she fully vests at 10% ownership. Does that make sense? So if she leaves before year 5, I don't buy her out. I wanted to make sure she would stay until year 5, and then she'd get 5%. And then she stays another 5 years, she gets another 5%, and it is capped at 10.
Hey, so you were talking about how hiring can be tough, finding good quality employees. What does your hiring process entail to find those high quality people?
Oh man, I'm a numbers girl, right? So the more you can diversify, the better. So it looks like I have a friend who's at the BYU MAC program. And I'm like, Kate, where are you looking for jobs? Tell me. And she's like, Jenny, I don't look on LinkedIn. That isn't a thing really for my age group, my demographic. And so she's like, we rely heavily on recruiters. So I'm thinking, okay, I need to pursue that. I want top talent, right? So in February, I know Emily and my whole staff was completely maxed with work. And so I made a phone call to a friend who's one of the smartest ladies I know. And I said, Soraya, she's maybe 50. And I really wanted somebody who had kids out of the home that could maybe work full time and turn the dial, rather than a lot of people that can only give 10 or 15 hours. And I called Soraya and I said, I probably can't afford you, but is there a chance you come work for me? So again, it's kind of that, like, maybe there's a chance. I'm going to go for it. If she turns me down, it's fine. And we got her. And she's a forensic accountant, and she quit her job and came to work for us, which is so awesome. So we post on LinkedIn, we network, we post it on, LDS. We don't do KSL because we got a lot of Glassdoor is a viable option. I have found though that by hiring people that are friends or acquaintances of my staff, typically yield better results. It's a personality type. I've had an employee with an MBA and her CPA, and she really dropped the ball on everything. She was great at school, but that did not translate to work. And so I don't necessarily think that education is always the indicator of their success. I think it's a mentality and a work ethic. And so if I have someone that says, yes, this person's incredible, that's going to probably be a better chance of success than a blind hire. And we have had blind hires that were great, but I feel just a little bit more confident in those. Sometimes they're hard to find.
That's great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I find your story so incredible and so inspiring. I am an entrepreneur, just hit 1 year in our journey. We are in the black, but still small and growing. What's something that you wish you would have known when you were at my stage?
So what I wish I would have known is to take chances on people. I wish I had a mentor that said, yeah, hire. That is the best thing that you could do. Instead, I'm trying to do everything myself. I'm wearing all the hats. I'm burning myself completely out. And so hiring was my number one. My number two was offering profit sharing. And also just having the confidence to turn to Emily and say, this is what I need. Now, again, funny, Emily applied for a job with me 2 years before she got hired. She had been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years and had a big gap in her resume. And I wasn't interested. We didn't need another accountant, and I turned her down. And then a year or two later, she applies again, and we hired her, and she's like, funny thing, do you remember that you didn't hire me 2 years ago? I think there's something to be said for people who just keep trying, right? So she went and did some more certifications, came back, and now she's number two. So I think that it is important to have a growth mindset. I think it's important to have the confidence to go for it. If I didn't know something, I would ask the CPAs or the tax accountants of my clients, you know, what does this look like, or what do you recommend? I was always asking questions. And I think it's important to do that. And I also think that relationships are important. And I don't mean that from the standpoint of networking. I'm talking real, legitimate relationships with people where they trust you, where they value your friendship, where they call you and say, hey, can you help me out with this? Or I have this opportunity, and we have that friendship and that relationship. So I kind of feel partly like, you know, with AJ and RevU, that's partly why I'm here. I went on his podcast and he was razzing me about my shoes, and he's like, you're not a typical accountant. And I just thought that was so funny, and I really like AJ, and then he just was giving me so much attention for these dumb shoes that I'm like, AJ, I'm sending you a pair of these Tokyos. And it's just, I value him as a friend. I feel like he's a friend. And I think that with my clients, with my staff, I want them to recognize that friendship and that relationship is most important. And so I would focus on that, and if you're doing that, you'll be very successful. Rather than it's numbers, it's profits. That is my number one focus.
Thank you. In line with her question, let's go a year earlier to where you're just starting or before that, a company. What advice do you have for those people, especially when it comes to accounting? Because someone like me, if I wanted to start a company, I do not have an accounting background. So what advice do you have for those people who are starting fresh and don't have an accounting background?
Hire us to help you. People flounder, and they, you know, I actually had a friend who is starting a business, and she was one of the 30 women to watch for Utah Business, and she's like, oh, I hired, you know, somebody to do some accounting, and I'm trying to help her out, and I'm just like, okay, that is a catastrophic move. You know, if you paid $100 more per month, you're gonna have 1,000 times better service. So if you have good numbers, then you will be fine as a business owner. I had that client that called me recently, the CFO, he said, Jenny, I don't have good numbers. I don't trust my controller and what she's giving me. I don't know if my inventory is correct. Our sales guys can't make good decisions because they don't have accurate numbers. He's like, nothing is accurate. And if you don't have good numbers, you can't make good decisions. So yeah, pony up and pay a few $100s a month, take it off your plate, let Booksmarts take care of it, and then grow your business. And coming back to your question, I would say, you know, starting out, did I intentionally start Booksmarts thinking that I'm gonna have a, you know, multi-million-dollar business? No, absolutely not. I 100% just had to make some money to support my family. So I think it's important that business owners think bigger and bigger. And it is possible. And I'm saying that from a business standpoint. I'm saying that personally. You think bigger, because it is possible. And there are people out there that are smarter and that can help you turn the dial. And if you don't have the right people, then you need to find them. So ask and talk with people and find the right people, or the right accountants, or the right lawyers, or whatever that looks like, so that you can be successful. I had one business owner. She did the most incredible work. I won't say what her industry she was in, but she was fabulous. The best I've ever seen. But she had so much debt. She had a building that was so expensive. She's driving the most expensive car at the time. Her credit card was 80% personal charges. And I'm looking at her, and she gets behind on her sales tax. She never caught up from that. The penalties and interest, same with the payroll taxes. If you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, and you don't get your sales tax correct, and you're not paying your payroll taxes correctly or timely, it's really hard to recover from that. If you have so much debt or any significant amount of debt, and you're chasing that interest, it's really going to inhibit your growth. So I think it is important that you keep your debt as low as possible, that you only invest in things that you feel like, I can handle this. That's just a numbers game, right? If I make decisions and think, okay, I can bring on another CPA. It might eat into profits, but I can support that. I can actually support 2 or 3, but I don't make that move unless I know I absolutely have enough in savings, or if I lose X, Y, or Z clients, I can still support them. So for me, I'm quite conservative, and I make sure that it's calculated. What I can support, the staff, that I have enough in savings, all those things. And I think it's important to make sure you don't leverage yourself too much. And I think it's absolutely critical that you have good numbers.
Okay, thank you so much for those who asked questions, and thank you, Jenny, for joining us today
you
to
bet.
share all of your wisdom. So
Thanks for
I'm going to
having me.
wrap us up with our final question that we just like to ask all our featured founders, and that is, what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
Something fun.
Yeah.
Being able to travel with my kids.
What's
And
one
my
of your favorite
husband.
places you guys have been?
We just went to Paris for spring break. My kids have all been learning French, so that was super fun. The year before, for spring break, we all went to Israel and Egypt, and that was with my extended family. I spent some time in high school. I lived in Israel, and so it was kind of a dream to go back with my siblings and my parents and all of our kids, because we'd all lived there together. So that was really special. My mom is dying of breast cancer. She went on hospice on Monday. And for my 40th birthday, I said, if I could do one thing, if I could go anywhere, I want to go back to Israel with my mom and all of my siblings. And so, prioritizing family and time is really important. And to be fair, if we didn't have any money, that would be fine too. My kids' favorite vacation is camping with their Groberg side of the family. So it's not necessary, but that was a really neat thing to be able to go do that with my family.
That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. Well, we have a little swag bag
Thank
here
you.
to thank you for your time. And
Thank
just
you.
one more time, can we just give Jenny thanks for being here, and I'll turn the time back over to Ashley.